Hi there, Guy here. Happy New Year. Good to be back and looking forward to 2023. Now before we dive in, let's have a quick recap of 2022, shall we? 37 videos and a pretty respectable 210 models painted in those videos. Annoyingly, the biggest Warhammer model of them all still only counts as one. This was the first year where I was creating content entirely at the studio and not from home at all. We hit 300,000 subscribers and we also expanded, with Games Workshop's former videographer and editor, Hattie, joining Team Midwinter Minis. We saw the long-awaited return of the Start Collecting Deathmatch series, and we raised a ton of cash for charity too, £9,317 to be exact, going to some exceptionally good causes like the mental health charity Calm, Doctors Without Borders and Amnesty International. So what have we got in store for 2023? Well, no joke, I have hundreds of video ideas kicking around. Now, I might be a creative soul, but I am terrible at planning. Well, this year I'm actually trying to get organised, and with Hattie's help, we've planned videos out for the entirety of this year already. Crazy! Without giving you too many spoilers, but hopefully allaying any fears you have, we're going to carry on making cool painting and wargaming videos, no dramatic change of direction. We'll be starting a few new big fun projects and creating more useful resources and beginner focus videos too, but we'll also be putting a big focus on finishing old ongoing projects and finally getting closure on them. The 2nd edition box set painting series, the Warlord Titan, the next rounds of the Start Collecting Deathmatch, and finally repainting that life-size Space Marine. We've also left some space to make quick, fun, impulsive videos like this too. So what are we painting today? This. Now, what is this? Let me give you a bit of backstory. This is Jamie. Jamie and I have been friends since we were 4 years old. We went to the same school and started painting and playing Warhammer at the same time. It's one of those nice friendships where you might not see each other for years and years, but just carry on where you left off. Anyway, way back in February 2022, I was in Jersey visiting family and caught up with Jamie. He let me have a snoop around his man cave and have some fun with his collection of new and vintage pinball and arcade machines. His new sweetheart was this Jurassic Park machine, made by Stern Pinball. It totally reminds me of the classic Data East Jurassic Park machine from back in the day, and I remember playing it at Funland, the only video game arcade in Jersey, before it burned to the ground in a huge fire. Bye bye childhood. Anyway, Jamie asked me if I'd like to spice up the T-Rex head that sits at the back of the cabinet, and I thought, yeah, it sounded like fun. Fast forward to today, and this poor girl has been on the back burner for almost a full year. There's always been a more important or pressing project to do, but today I'm saying to hell with the algorithm and just painting something that will be a nice, fun, creative palette cleanser. The original model has a very basic paint job. Just a two-tone greeny brown airbrush, painted eyes, gums and teeth. So it'll be a nice blank canvas for me to have some fun with. Now while I'm at it, let's kill 2 backburner birds with 1 stone, and I'll also try out these new TT combat paints they sent me preview versions of. The Kickstarter is now over, so I missed the boat on that, but I'd still be interested to see how they work, both with the paintbrush and with the airbrush. This isn't sponsored at all, I'm just curious to try out a new hobby tool, and I'll give you my honest opinion. I'm not sure if this is the version of the T-Rex head that just lurks at the back of the cabinet, or the one that chomps on the ball, but either way, I'll play it safe with the internal gubbins and I won't get any paint on stuff, just in case I ruin any sensors or conductivity. I unscrewed the jaw from the head, and then removed the support structure from the head itself, separating the parts for easy painting. The inside of the mouth has some really roughly cut edges, typical of rotary tool marks on plastic or vinyl maybe, which is what I reckon this head is made of. Yeah, definitely vinyl, very bendy without the metal structure holding it together. There's also a couple of visible mold lines which I can trim away to make it look a little bit more special. I also gave the surfaces a quick going over with a very soft emery board, which should not only key the surfaces for better paint adhesion, but also add some micro texturing to the model itself, which might hint at a rough skin texture later on maybe. There's actually a surprising amount of texture detail on the model itself that the original paint job totally hid. Okay, let's stick the parts on some scrap wood ready for priming. Hocus pocus diplodocus. We've got a black T-Rex head ready for paint. Right then, let's crack out these TT Combat preview paints and have a bash, shall we? I'm not sure how many colours there'll be in the full range, but it looks like they've sent me a pretty decent assortment for a starter set. A couple of metallics, a wash, black, grey, white, primaries, and some variations, and a couple of skin tones too. But what shall I use for this project? I want to make this dino head look like a slightly more stylized version of the one in the film, so to guide me, I found this really cool photo of the animatronic they used in the paddock escape scene in the original film, but shown without the nighttime mood lighting. Unfortunately, this kind of palette is where my eyes really let me down, as subtle greens, reds and browns all look a little bit grey and desaturated for me. Fortunately though, Hattie's eyes work, so I asked her to pick me the right colours. Right, let's see what we're working with by giving the whole model a dry brush with white. Yeah, nice, as I thought, loads of texture to work with. I love the name of this midnight purpley blue. I fired a bit of throwing shade through the airbrush from the bottom up and aiming into any cracks and crevices. For the brighter skin tone, I combined marsh green with Adriatic skin and airbrushed following the rough pattern of the reference picture. Nice and thin to keep a hint of that monochrome underpainting. Same thing again, but making a reddy brown by mixing trench mud and capo red and following the picture for colour placement. Now, even though I've thinned these paints loads, they're still covering really well and are surprisingly opaque, so great for speedy airbrush base coating if that's what you're after. For extra dark areas like the eye sockets, I added a bit of black to that reddy brown mix in the cup and the airbrush and gave the shadowy bits a quick blast. The final step with the airbrush is mixing Adriatic skin and white and laying down some basic highlight zones. Once that was all dry and the basic colours are down, I'm going to lock everything in with a gloss varnish now. This will do two things. First, it'll be a layer of protection against getting bashed with balls.
Phrasing.
And secondly, it'll give me a kind of save point where I can easily rub off any mistakes I make later to reveal this layer again. Right, brush time. First up, let's see what this umber wash looks like. I painted it onto all the skin folds and deep recesses, and also used it to mark out the areas of funky patterns on the skin too, especially around the muzzle. Or snout? What's it called on a dinosaur? The mouthy nose bit, you know what I'm talking about. This is going to start looking a bit weird because this seems to have a matte finish and the rest is glossy from the varnish, but we'll give it a final coat of varnish at the end to tie everything together, so don't worry. I don't have a black wash in the set TT Combat sent me, so I improvised by adding a tiny brush tip of black to that brown wash, and yeah, that works. I only added this to the deepest, darkest recesses and also reinforced the darker parts of the patterns I was building up. Right, let's add some sketchy highlights to bump up the contrast a bit. Using a mix of Adriatic skin toned down with marsh green. That reference photo isn't a 360-degree shot, so I had to guess at some of the patterns on the top of the head, but I used the nicely sculpted detail to guide me. I then used some thinned halfling skin to start adding some scaly details to the lighter areas of the skin. I added a tiny bit of white into that Adriatic skin on the palette to create a subtle highlight colour, and then did tiny brush strokes just catching the top edge of all the scales I painted on, missing a few here and there to add a bit of natural variety to the look. This will hopefully make the scales look like they're being illuminated from the top. And while the white was out, I gave the teeth, gums and eyes a quick base coat, as it will make any colours I paint over the top of them pop a bit more than trying to work from a dark base coat. Next up, I mixed trench mud with a tiny bit of black to create a darker tone to paint on the darker scales and patterned areas. Same effect again, but making the markings a bit larger than the lighter scales. I also sort of reverse highlighted the dark patterns too, making them appear darker in the centre like in the reference shot. I also used this to fine line some of the deepest recesses for extra contrast. For those vibrant red eyes, let's try out Spotlight Yellow and Viscera Red. Wow, this yellow's great. Even though it's thinned, it's actually quite opaque. Really strong over a white base coat, that's for sure. I think yellows are always a pretty good test for the quality of a paint range. I then mixed a tiny bit of that red into the yellow to create a softer orange and painted around the edges of the eye, leaving only pure yellow in a small circle around the pupil. A bit more red and a bit further into the edges until I had a nice smooth transition going. Let's give the other red a bash for the mouth and gums. Capo red. Any clues what that's referencing? Answers on a postcard, or in the comments, whatever's easier. Pure red for the gums and inside the mouth, and then I added some white to bring out the pinky vibes and started painting on some natural mouthy textures. I don't think you're going to be able to see this at all when it's in place in the pinball cabinet, but yeah, why not? I'm not being overly bothered about being very tidy around the teeth, as I'm going to be touching up those in a minute. And here's that minute right now. I mixed a bit of umber wash into white to make a more natural toothy bone colour and gave its pearly whites their first coat. And while I waited for that to dry, I popped a tiny bit of black paint very carefully into the pupils. Wow, terrifying, I love it. I then added a bit more of that umber wash to the tooth colour and sketched some streaky downward patterns on the teeth to match the reference photo. Right, let's give everything a few coats of matte varnish for protection and to kill off the reflectivity of the gloss varnish we used earlier. Let's put this bad boy together. Last step, a tiny bit of gloss varnish into the eyeball to give it that wet, shiny look. And here it is! I was going to say clever girl, but that was the raptor, wasn't it? Anyway, a very cool T-Rex head, ready for my mate's man cave. I had loads of fun painting it, trying something new, and whoa, nothing related to Warhammer. Crazy. Here's a quick before and after shot to show you the difference. Now, nothing against the original paint job from the factory, those artists have got tight deadlines and targets to meet, but sometimes it's worth treating yourself and making something extra special, whether it's for you or for a friend. Speaking of which, let's see what Jamie thinks.
Hi, this is Jamie. Wow, that is incredible. The level of detail is awesome. It looks like the actual T-Rex from Jurassic Park now, rather than a monotone log. She's very attractive, absolutely beautiful. Can't wait to get her back in the machine. She's exceptional, absolutely amazing. I love the detail in the teeth as well. Don't think I could have thought about it better in my head. I think that's absolutely amazing. Thanks, Guy.
I know it would be cool to see it in situ in the pinball machine for a final payoff, but it's currently in the post on its way back to Jersey. I'll definitely show you how it looks as a little update when it arrives though. As far as the TT Combat paints go, even though I only had a few to try, I think they worked really well. The bottles feel nice and robust. I had to poke a little wire down the tip on a couple of bottles to get the gunked up paint out of the way, but they behave like some of my favourite paints from Vallejo or Citadel, so I'd definitely be interested to try more colours when they're available. I'll leave a link to the pre-order page just in case you want to try some for yourself when they actually get released, and remember, this isn't sponsored at all, this is just my honest opinion. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and maybe share it with the Jurassic Park fan in your life. Special thanks to our awesome supporters over on Patreon who give us the freedom to sometimes do simple, fun videos like this that, if it were just down to YouTube, simply wouldn't pay the bills. And a warm welcome to this week's new supporters. Indie Kid the Cobra Kid 1011, Trey Holguin, Brother Klepto, Reese Mays, Nell Shamrell Harrington, Glory to Ukraine, Hydra's Head Minis, Rich Mulholland, Daniel Hunter, Garrett McKnight, Raspberry Milkshake, Bushman, and Toasty Snails. If you want to join, you can find a link in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.